This is Ronell Wilson, the inmate who slept with a pregnant prison officer. His case was that of sheer prison misconduct, but was nothing compared to the actions of Richard Matt, who seduced a cop into letting him escape jail, or Susan Smith, who openly flirted and had sex with a prison officer. These are some of the most insane cases of inmates who had steamy affairs with cops. Linton Weirich. In 2024, Linton, an inmate serving a 4.5-year sentence, was caught having sex with a prison guard at HMP Wandsworth. The prison guard, Linda de Susa Abreu, was filmed together with Linton in a very disturbing footage that quickly went viral at the time of the incident. Linda, 30 at the time, was on duty when she entered Linton's cell and had sex with him. The act was filmed by another inmate and was reported to have lasted for almost 5 minutes. In the viral footage, an inmate was heard screaming in excitement and claiming that they had made history. Another footage also showed Linda coming out of the inmate's bed. This footage clearly showed that it was a consensual act by both Linton and Linda, and it's not surprising since Linda is also an OnlyFans model who had appeared on a television series about swinging. After the video went viral on social media, Linda was identified by HMP Wandsworth staff and was arrested by the Metropolitan Police at Heathrow Airport. However, before the arrest, she had telephoned saying that she was not returning to work. This call was made while she fled to the airport, where she was eventually arrested. Linda admitted to 3 separate sexual encounters with the convicted burglar and was sentenced to 15 months in prison, half of which will be served on license. Shockingly, this viral act wasn't the only thing that Linton and Linda did. In a previous incident, Linda was recorded on her body cam performing oral sex on Linton on a separate occasion on the same day. During her sentencing, the judge noted that her action was that of evident enthusiasm, especially since it happened on different occasions. While this is clearly shocking, it's nothing compared to what this next inmate did. John McGee. John was convicted for the killing of a charity worker, Richard Bratton. The inmate, who was initially on license, drove at excessive speed in an attempt to evade arrest from police. He reportedly drove with his lights off and plowed into Bratton, killing him. In prison, John is said to have had a relationship with Emily Watson, a prison officer, for a period of 4 months. The duo had virtual sex via FaceTime, and Emily sent him nude photos and a video. Emily also went to John's cell alone on 3 occasions, and they had sex once. The details of this shocking act became public after prison officials got suspicious of how much time Emily spent at John's wing in the prison. Later investigations further revealed that the inmate was able to contact her on Instagram via an iPhone 6 hidden inside a PlayStation he had previously opened. After their affair became public, Emily pleaded guilty to a charge of misconduct in public office and was consequently sacked. She was also sentenced to 12 months in prison. Similar to John, this next inmate also did some shocking things with a prison officer. Richard Matt. When inmates get disturbingly close to cops, they often tend to take advantage. This was the case for Matt and former prison worker Joyce Mitchell. Mitchell became close to Matt and another inmate, David Sweat, both of whom were convicted murderers. She professed her love for Sweat in notes she secretly sent him, and she also allegedly engaged in numerous sexual encounters with Matt in the prison tailor shop. Mitchell reportedly smuggled hacksaw blades, chisels, and other tools into the prison for Matt and Sweat. She put them in frozen hamburger meat, which a guard later gave to the inmates. She also allegedly bought 6 hacksaw blades and gave them directly to Matt. Now, these weapons weren't just for protection in times of prison violence, they were also tools to aid the inmates' escape. In 2015, Mitchell allegedly agreed to flee with Sweat and Matt. She helped them collect items including guns, ammunition, camping gear, and a compass. The inmates used the power tools they received from Mitchell to cut through the back of their cells. They broke through a brick wall, cut into a steam pipe, and finally got outside the prison walls through a manhole. They had arranged hoodies and other clothing in their sheets to make it appear as if they were in their beds. Initially, Mitchell planned to meet the inmates on the outskirts of the prison, but she got cold feet and didn't show up. After prison officials discovered the inmates were missing, they thoroughly searched for 22 days and eventually caught them. Matt was shot and killed by authorities, while Sweat was shot and apprehended. Mitchell was also arrested and convicted for providing material support to inmates. She was charged with felony, misdemeanor, promoting prison contraband in the 1st degree, and criminal facilitation in the 4th degree. She was consequently sentenced to between 2 and 8 years in prison. She was also ordered to pay $80,000 in restitution for damages incurred during the escape. It was later revealed that both Matt and Sweat had seduced Mitchell into helping them with their escape plan. But while it was tagged seduction, this next case was clearly an affair. Adam Higs. Adam Higs was an inmate at the HMP Oakwood. There he met Katie Lockton, a prison custody officer with whom he eventually began an affair. Katie Lockton, 27 at the time, was a serving prison custody officer at the facility. She spent a lot of time at the block where Higs was housed, and this raised a lot of suspicions. It was later discovered that the duo were secretly having an affair. Adam sent Katie handwritten letters and communicated with her on social media. He also performed sexual acts with her. Further checks revealed the couple had bypassed the prison's security system and were communicating through a fake contact on Adam's telephone in his cell. The inmate made a total of 3,451 calls to the number and spoke with Lockton for more than 380 hours. He also managed to hide a mobile phone which he used to communicate with Lockton through social media. After they were caught, officers arrested Lockton and searched her home where they found 3 handwritten letters from Adam. The couple later admitted their offenses, and Lockton was sentenced to 12 months in jail for misconduct in a public office. Adams, on the other hand, was handed an 8-month sentence for possessing a phone. This was in violation of the law that prohibits inmates from having devices capable of transmitting or receiving images, sounds, or information through electronic means. Similar to Adam and Lockton, this next pair also had a mutual affair. Joshua Mullings. Joshua and his prison lover Shanah had sex when they could not be seen by others, whether officers or inmates. Shanah Begum was supposed to supervise the inmate, but instead of doing that, she engaged in a very inappropriate relationship with him. Shanah took Joshua into private areas of the prison, all under the guise of supervision. They were often alone together, play fighting and flirting. They also engaged in heavy petting and penetrative sexual activities. Shanah reportedly gave Joshua oral sex on at least 2 occasions, and they had full sexual intercourse at least once. What's particularly shocking about this affair was that everything they did happened in a store cupboard, somewhere they could not be seen by other officers or inmates. Their affair became public after suspicious prison officers installed a camera in the cupboard to see what was going on. They also began a covert investigation into her activities within the jail premises. Shanah and Joshua were caught in the act. Shanah pleaded guilty to a charge of misconduct in a public office and was jailed for 16 months. But while their affair seems absurd, this next pair did something even more ridiculous. Curtis Warren. Curtis was a drug kingpin who was held behind bars at maximum security prison HMP Franklin. He was serving a 13-year sentence for drug trafficking, plus an additional 10 after failing to abide by a £198 million confiscation order. During his time in prison, Curtis had an affair with a prison officer who was supervising him. Stephanie Smithwhite became obsessed with Curtis and began a relationship with him. They regularly had sex and secret trysts even while the drug lord was behind bars. Staff had become suspicious of their relationship, and a surveillance operation began. During investigation, Curtis and Stephanie were seen passing notes, which were highly sexualized. It was also found they had called each other 213 times in 3 months. Stephanie allegedly cut a hole in her trousers so they could easily have intercourse. She visited Curtis very often and spent a lot of time with him. Stephanie was later investigated for misconduct in a public office. The first misconduct charge was related to the sexual relationship she had with Curtis, and the second was because she failed to report that he had access to a smuggled phone. She was eventually jailed for 2 years. Similar to Curtis, this next inmate also shared some steamy sexual passions with a cop. Andrew Roberts. Roberts was a convicted murderer who killed his girlfriend and their daughter. Following the murders, Roberts bundled their bodies behind a mattress in the child's upstairs toy room. He sprayed perfume and aftershave in the room to conceal the odor of the bodies. He also forged a note to show that Louise had gone to visit her friends. While Andrew was serving time in a prison on the Isle of Wight, he met prison officer Lauren McIntyre, and the duo had a very intimate affair. They sent sex messages to each other talking about how their encounters were really hot and risky. They talked about how they longed for each other, and Lauren told him how she keeps remembering the first time they kissed. Lauren provided Andrew with the personal mobile number of another prison officer whom she also had an affair with. Even when she knew Andrew's intention to assault her colleague, she failed to raise an alarm about it. The officer was later attacked, sustaining significant head injuries. Both Andrew and Lauren planned to frame another prisoner for the attack by planting a mobile phone with the injured officer's phone number on it. However, they were caught before this could happen. Lauren later pleaded guilty to 4 charges of misconduct in a public office in 2021 and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. While Andrew and Lauren got punished with prison sentences, this next pair got a bigger punishment. Ronell Wilson. Ronell was convicted of shooting detectives James Nemerin and Rodney Andrews in the back of their heads on March 10, 2003. While he was in prison, Ronell engaged in a romantic relationship with a pregnant prison worker. Nancy Gonzalez was seen on video in the federal prison spending several minutes at a time with Ronell in a vacant activity room. Investigators first learned of the alleged relationship from other inmates who told them they saw Nancy and Ronell hugging and kissing in the activity room. Another inmate also reported that he saw Ronell at his cell with the door propped open, his genitals exposed as Nancy left the cell. After receiving tips from the inmates, investigators began reviewing videos of Nancy at work. In a video, she was seen standing at his cell door for lengthy periods of time while the other inmates are locked into their cells at night. Nancy was later arrested, and upon further investigation, more shocking truths were revealed. One of these is that Ronell wasn't just having sexual affairs with a pregnant cop, he was also the father of her child. Investigators discovered that when the relationship between Nancy and Ronell ended, the prison officer became involved with another inmate. She told him details of how she became pregnant by Ronell, details that were all recorded. In the recorded conversation, Nancy expressed her fear, stating clearly that she got wrapped up in something that she shouldn't have gotten into. She also expressed fears about what she would say to her future child about how he was conceived. After they were caught, Nancy and Ronell made statements to investigators saying that the baby is truly his child. While Ronell paid the ultimate price of unplanned fatherhood, this next inmate got away with little or no punishment. Kuram Razak. He had an affair with Tashaa Gunn, a prison officer at Berwyn Prison. They formed a grossly inappropriate relationship which had contributed to her downfall. Tashaa Gunn, 27 at the time, shared explicit videos and live footage on mobile phones with Kuram. There were also photos of them hugging and kissing, and some of these pictures were taken in Kuram's cell. On one occasion, Kuram had directed Tashaa to perform sex acts on live video. Tashaa had also smuggled a pair of knickers into the jail for Kuram, hidden in her bra. Many of the pictures that were found in Tashaa's room became solid evidence that were used against her in court. She was eventually jailed for 12 months on account of having a fling with a dangerous inmate. While Kuram shared a mutual passion with Tashaa, this next inmate used seduction to have her way. Susan Smith. Susan was sentenced to life imprisonment for drowning her two sons, 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alexander, in a South Carolina lake in October 1994. She had claimed the boys were taken by an unidentified black man during a carjacking. However, she later confessed to strapping the two boys into their car seats and pushing the car into the lake. Susan was consequently charged for their murder. 5 years into her sentence, Susan began an affair with a prison guard, Alfred Rowe. Alfred was the captain of security at the Camille Griffin Graham Correctional Institution, where Susan was serving her life sentence. While telling his story, Alfred noted that Susan constantly flirted with him. She called him handsome and asked if he'll be willing to have sex with her.
She explained that she thought I was handsome and wanted to know if I would be willing to have sex with her.
At first, Alfred said he rejected her advances as he was married at the time, but then a few shifts later, another inmate came up and gave him an envelope, and it was a letter from Susan asking the same thing, except this time she mentioned how she was lonely and missed being free. Despite his initial reluctance, Alfred finally gave in, and they started an affair, a relationship that grew and escalated. Eventually, Alfred found out that Susan had also been sleeping with another guard who was later convicted and fired. He became skeptical and worried that Susan would also expose him, and she did. After returning home from a family vacation, 2 law enforcement officers knocked on Alfred's door and questioned him about his relationship with Susan. He ultimately pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 5 years probation. He also lost his job as a result. Just like Susan, this next inmate also had some intimate moments in prison. Casey White. Casey was an inmate at the Lauderdale County Jail. While in jail, he had a romantic relationship with Vicky White, a prison officer. The pair had a steamy secret affair before Vicky helped him escape. The forbidden romance began just months after Casey was transferred to the jail where Vicky had worked for 17 years. During their sexual encounters, Vicky and Casey had talked sex toys, explicit acts, and even lingerie she bought in sex stores. On one occasion, Casey spoke to Vicky about a banana, and she asked if he wanted her to perform a raunchy act on the object. Casey also asked Vicky if her were hard, telling her he wanted to kiss her chest and rip her little tank top off. While on the call, the pair moaned each other's names while discussing their ambitions to one day have real sex. And they did. According to reports, Vicky and Casey had sex inside the jail on several occasions. It was disclosed that Vicky, who was the assistant director of the jail, would tell Casey's cellmates they were being granted yard time, and Casey would make excuses to stay behind. This alone time gave them plenty of room to have intimate contact with each other. Interestingly, Vicky made these disturbing calls using a burner phone at work. She knew the calls were being recorded but didn't care much. During later investigations, Vicky's colleagues checked her home and realized she had a burner phone which had made over 1,000 calls to Casey in jail. Eventually, after the disturbing affair, Vicky made a decision to help Casey escape. The duo were on the run for 11 days before they were caught by police. During the chase, Vicky shot herself in the head to avoid arrest, while Casey was recaptured. It was discovered that Casey had asked Vicky to marry him after he was out of prison. While Casey and Vicky paid the ultimate price, this next pair showed little or no remorse for their actions. Jordan McWeeny. Jordan is serving a life sentence for the murder and sexual molestation of Zara Alina, a 35-year-old law graduate who was killed on her way home in 2022. In 2023, he was caught having sex with Haley Jones, a prison worker at HMP Belmarsh. Haley eventually admitted having an inappropriate relationship with Jordan. She also pleaded guilty to misconduct in public office. However, while Haley faced trial, Jordan did not appear for the trial. He claimed he was having difficulty with walking. He also refused to attend the court hearing when he was sentenced for the murder of Alina. Later on, Haley was granted conditional bail, while Jordan was charged with encouraging or assisting the commission of an indictable offense. While Haley and Jordan didn't serve heavy sentences, this next pair didn't get so lucky. Jacob Parker. Jacob was an inmate at the Conroe-Montgomery County Jail Facility. In 2021, he had a sexual affair with Charlene O'Banion, a jail deputy at the facility. Charlene O'Banion had sex with Jacob while he was in custody. The pair shared a romantic relationship that thrived even when Jacob was out of prison. During an interview, authorities disclosed that Charlene had both penetrative and oral sex with Jacob in an area that was out of sight in the jail. They performed sexual acts with each other and also spoke about their fantasies through sex calls. During her interrogation, Charlene initially feigned innocence and acted like she was unaware of the allegations. However, after the officers showed her proof of sexual conversations she'd had with Jacob, she began to provide details into the affair. Charlene narrated that there was a drug issue inside the jail which led to no floor workers in a particular section. When this happened, jail staff would take volunteers from another housing unit to perform cleaning duties in that section. During that period, she would go to a secluded place together with Jacob, and there they would kiss and have sex. Authorities said they were alerted to what had happened between the pair after they found a recorded call in which Charlene and Jacob discussed their sexual activity. Charlene eventually pleaded guilty to improper sexual activity and was sentenced to 100 days in jail. Just like Jacob, this next inmate also did some crazy things with a cop. Alex Coxen. Alex had a sexual relationship with Jennifer Gavin, a cop who worked at the North Wales prison. Jennifer reportedly fell in love with Alex and sent him sexually explicit videos of herself. She also smuggled in a phone for him, a move that cost her about 150 pounds. During interrogation, a phone was found hidden under a prison laptop in Alex's cell. It was discovered that Jennifer accepted contact with him using Snapchat. She then went on to send him a snap of herself. She also kissed him on several occasions. Jennifer later pleaded guilty to misconduct in public office. She wept as she was sentenced to jail for 8 months. Authorities claimed she struggled to explain why and how she ended up doing the things she was doing. It was also stated that perhaps she was at a particularly low point in her life. While there are inmates who had their way with cops, there are also cops who initiated sexual acts with inmates. Tina Gonzalez. Tina's case is one of the most shocking incidents of a prison love affair. The prison officer who worked at the Fresno County Jail had sex with an inmate in the presence of 11 other people. She reportedly cut a hole in her uniform to make sex with the inmate easier. According to reports, officials at the prison began to investigate Tina's moves after staff members were tipped in December 2019 to a county jail inmate with a cell phone. The said inmate was also revealed to have been in a sexual relationship with Tina Gonzalez. A search of the inmate's cell led to officers to the phone and solid evidence was found. After being interviewed by detectives, Tina quit the sheriff's office and pleaded no contest to a felony count of sexual activity, a felony count of possession of drugs or an alcoholic beverage, and a misdemeanor count of possession of cellular device with intent to deliver to an inmate. It was later disclosed that Tina not only had sex with the inmate, she also gave him razors and told him when officers would inspect his cell. This act further worsened her charges since she obviously endangered the lives of her co-workers. Tina was sentenced to 210 days in jail, followed by 2 years of probation. The sentence came after an assistant sheriff noted that the officer's actions were something only a depraved mind can come up with. During Tina's trial, her former boss, Assistant Sheriff Steve McComas, told the court that while he had witnessed many pretty disgusting things during his job as a prison officer, nothing was as shocking as Tina's sex session in full view of other inmates. Similar to Tina, this cop also did some despicable things with inmates. Tashaa Majors. In 2020, Tashaa was charged with sexual assault after authorities accused her of having a year-long affair with a male inmate at a prison in Newark. Between November 2019 and December 2020, Tashaa had sexual intercourse with a male inmate in Northern State Prison. It's said that she was assigned to supervise the inmate by virtue of her status as a senior correctional police officer. However, instead of doing that, she began having sexual affairs with the inmate. After she was caught and arrested, Tashaa was charged with second-degree sexual molestation. Officials described her affair with the inmate as criminal, especially since prison staff have responsibility for inmates, much like teachers and students. At the time of the incident, Tashaa was racking in about $79,576 a year for her senior role, a position she lost after investigation. Also, after the incident, her Facebook page, which contained steamy images of her, was quickly taken down. Just like Tashaa, this next cop was also suspended after her prison affair was exposed. Akira Jones. In February 2024, Akira, a female corrections officer, was caught having sex with an inmate at the men's jail. She was taken into custody, and after a weeks-long internal investigation, more details of the affair were discovered. Although the sheriff's office did not specify the gender of the prisoner allegedly involved in the illicit affair, the agency's website stated that the incident happened in a part of the facility where male inmates are usually housed. Akira was later arrested and charged with felony on account of having sexual contact with a prisoner. She was also immediately placed on administrative leave as the sheriff's office launched a criminal probe. Over the years, several prison affair cases have surfaced, all sparking different controversies. While some have been swept under the carpet for fear of public scrutiny, others have quickly made the headlines. What are your thoughts on these prison affair stories? Let me know in the comments section. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, then be sure to click on this next card on your screen.